Step into the darkness with witness shadows. Every shadow has a witness, and every witness has a story they've been too afraid to tell. Welcome to Witness Shadows, your ultimate destination for true horror stories and disturbing stories that linger long after the screen goes black. Whether you're looking for scary stories to sleep to, or chilling stalking stories that make you double-check your locks, our collection of true stories is curated to haunt your subconscious. My reflection smiled at me before I even moved. I was 19 when my aunt asked me to stay in her house on Blackwater Road for a week, and at the time, it honestly sounded ideal. She'd been taken into hospital for something with her lungs. Nothing life-threatening, just serious enough that she didn't want the place left empty while she was away. I just finished a miserable stretch at a garden center outside Leeds. I was skint, and the thought of having a whole house to myself for a few nights felt less like a favor and more like a break. I honestly thought I'd spend the evenings watching telly, eating whatever was in her freezer, and enjoying the sort of quiet you never get when you still live half out of a rucksack. That was before I actually got there. Blackwater Row was one of those old terraces that all looked as though they'd been built with the same grim idea in mind, and then left to rot in slightly different ways. Tight little front steps, peeling paint, thin doors with cloudy glass. The sort of street where sound traveled too well, and yet somehow no one ever seemed to be outside. It was on the edge of a town called Ashcombe, the kind of place people passed through on the way to somewhere else, all soaked brick and tired shop fronts, and a high street that started dying years ago and never quite admitted it. It had been raining for nearly 3 days when I arrived. Not dramatic rain, not a proper thunderstorm, just that endless cold Yorkshire rain that seemed to come sideways and settle into your sleeves and the back of your neck and your mood. By the time I dragged my bag up the path to number 16, the whole street looked like it had been left underwater and only recently found again. My aunt's place was narrow, 3 floors if you counted the attic room, and it leaned in that way old houses do, as if it had spent too many years listening. The front door stuck in the frame when I opened it, and the first thing I noticed wasn't the smell of dust or stale air like I expected. It was damp soil. Fresh, cold, earthy damp, like someone had just kicked through a flower bed and walked it indoors. It was faint, but definite. I remember standing there with the key still in the lock, thinking that maybe she'd left potatoes somewhere, or there was a leak in the cellar. It was such an ordinary explanation that I clung to it straight away. That became a bit of a pattern. Inside, the house was exactly how I remembered it from when I was younger, only sadder somehow. Same yellowing wallpaper in the hall, same framed print of the Moors on the stairs, same little brass dish for keys on the radiator cover, but the rooms felt smaller without her in them. Not empty, exactly, just paused. As if the place had been holding itself still and waiting for someone to come back and tell it what was happening. I laughed at myself for thinking that. I wasn't the type to get weird about houses. Even now, I hate how dramatic that sounds. But the truth is, from the first half hour, that place didn't feel vacant. It felt occupied by the fact of being empty. I dumped my bag in the spare room on the first floor because the main bedroom smelled too strongly of my aunt's face powder, and I didn't want to feel like I was borrowing her life as well as her house. The spare room was small, with a narrow bed, a chest of drawers, and a window looking over the backyard. Beyond the yard, there was a row of old walls and fenced strips of garden gone wild with nettles, and beyond that, if you stood at the right angle, you could just see the back of the house next door. Number 14 was boarded up. I knew that already, vaguely. My aunt had once referred to it as that place, in a tone that made me not ask anything further. Seeing it properly in the wet evening light was worse than I expected. The boards over the downstairs windows were black with age and water, and one upper curtain, thin as skin, had somehow come loose and was hanging crooked behind cracked glass. The odd thing was that the house next door looked less abandoned than withheld, like it wasn't derelict so much as unwilling. But then everything seemed fine, like nothing would happen. I unpacked, I made tea. I found a packet of bourbons in the cupboard and stood in the kitchen eating them over the sink while the kettle hissed and the little radio on the windowsill muttered through static. I texted my cousin Daniel to say I'd got in all right. He sent back, "Try not to get murdered by Auntie Jean's wallpaper." That was Daniel all over. I sent him a photo of the hall, and he replied with about 6 laughing faces, and then, weirdly, "Don't go poking about next door." I remember staring at that for a second, thumb hovering over the screen, because I hadn't mentioned the boarded up house at all. Before I could ask what he meant, he sent, "Mum used to hate that street in bad weather. Dunno why." Anyway, I'm at work. It unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. Not enough to pack up and leave, obviously. Just enough to notice the house a bit more closely after that. The sounds, mostly. Old places always make sounds, I know that. Pipes knock. Floorboards settle. The wind finds gaps and uses them. But in my aunt's house, the noises seemed to wait until I stopped moving. If I was upstairs putting clothes away, everything below would be dead quiet. The moment I sat still, I'd hear a faint click from the kitchen, then a creak on the landing, then what sounded almost like something shifting its weight in the room directly above me. I told myself it was because I was listening for it now. That's the maddening thing about fear in the beginning. It doesn't feel like fear. It feels like a tension. At around 6:30, I took a bag of rubbish out to the back bin, and that was when I had the first proper moment of not wanting to be there. The yard was tiny, all cracked paving and slick moss, with a low brick wall at the end separating it from the overgrown strip behind the terrace. Rainwater had collected in the bird bath and in a broken blue plant pot, and the whole place had that metallic wet smell that comes just before it gets fully dark. I stepped out, dumped the bin bag, and heard someone say, very clearly, "Evening." Not loud, not aggressive, just close. I turned so fast I nearly slipped. There was no one in the yard. No one at the back gate because there wasn't one. No one leaning over the wall. Nothing but the boarded house next door, the rain ticking off the drain pipe, and a single upstairs window in number 14 reflecting the last bit of gray light. I stood there like an idiot, one hand still on the bin lid, waiting for someone to laugh or explain or move. No one did. After maybe 5 seconds, which felt much longer, I told myself it must have come from another garden further down, some voice carried strangely by the rain. I even said, "Right," out loud, as though that settled it. My own voice sounded thin. When I came back inside, I locked the back door. I wasn't even fully aware I was doing it. Just bolt, chain, check the handle twice. Then I made another tea I didn't really want and sat in the front room with the telly on low. It was one of those cozy little sitting rooms made gloomy by too much brown furniture, and the street lamp outside kept shining through the lace curtains in a way that made everything look underwater. I put some quiz show on and tried to focus, but every now and then my eyes would drift to the dark hall beyond the door. I had this weird sense that the rest of the house had become separate from me somehow. Not dangerous exactly, just attentive. At about 9, someone knocked at the front door. 3 knocks, slow, polite, spaced out. I got such a jolt I laughed under my breath, which is something I do when I'm genuinely frightened and don't want to admit it, even to myself. I muted the telly and listened. Nothing. I waited for a second set of knocks, or a voice, or footsteps going back down the path. There was only rain. I actually remember feeling irritated then, because irritation is easier than fear. I went into the hall, but I didn't open the door straight away. I looked through the little oval of the spy hole first. There was no one there. The path glistened empty under the street lamp. The pavement beyond it was empty too. No umbrella. No neighbor hurrying away. Nothing. I should probably explain that I'm not brave. I'm really not. I'm the sort of person who checks behind the shower curtain in hotel bathrooms despite knowing full well there won't be anything there. So the fact that I didn't open the door wasn't some clever instinct. I was just too uneasy. I stood there in the hall staring at the brass chain, trying to decide whether I was being ridiculous. Then from the other side of the door, right by the glass, there came the soft sound of someone exhaling. I froze. It wasn't a dramatic gasp. It was worse than that. Just a quiet breath, patient and close, as if whoever was out there had leaned in and fogged the pain. I stumbled back so hard my shoulder hit the umbrella stand. For one horrible second, I genuinely thought the door handle was about to turn. Instead, there was silence again. Thick, deliberate silence. I stayed in the hall longer than I should have, listening so hard it made the muscles in my neck ache. Eventually, I forced myself to look through the spy hole again. Still nothing, but this time, down at the very bottom of the frosted glass panel, there was a smear of water on the inside. That was the part that made my stomach drop. I bent down and touched it. Cold, clean, real. A single wet streak had run from the lower edge of the glass onto the paint of the door, as if rain had somehow appeared indoors and slid downward. I actually whispered no to myself, and I don't know why. It was such a small thing, a bit of water. There were any number of explanations. Condensation, my coat brushing the door earlier, me not remembering properly. But I knew I hadn't touched that part of the glass, and it hadn't been there before the knocking. I rang Daniel then. He didn't answer. I nearly rang my aunt in hospital and stopped myself because I could already imagine how it would sound. Hi, sorry, I know you're on oxygen, but your front door sounds damp. Instead, I paced the house, checking windows, checking the back door again, peering through curtains without really knowing what I expected to see. Outside, Blackwater Row had gone fully dark. The street lamp threw long, weak reflections across the wet pavement, and every house opposite had its curtains drawn except one. For a second, I thought I saw someone standing in that upstairs window across the street, just a shape watching out. Then a bus went past at the end of the road, headlights washing everything white, and there was nothing there after all. By 10, I was annoyed with myself. Properly annoyed. I told myself I was making a fool of myself in an old house during bad weather because Daniel had made one odd comment and someone might have knocked and walked off. That was all. I even said it out loud again in the kitchen while making toast, like I was trying to instruct my own nerves back into line. And to be fair, for half an hour or so, it worked. I ate, I watched some rubbish on iPlayer, I answered a message from a friend, and the house settled. No more knocks, no more voices, no more impossible wet marks. Then just after 11, I went upstairs to brush my teeth, and as I reached the first floor landing, I saw that the spare room door was standing open. I was absolutely certain I'd left it shut. There was no gust of wind, no open window, nothing to explain it. Just that small white painted door open by about 6 inches, revealing a strip of darkness inside. I stood there with my toothbrush in my hand, staring at it, feeling that odd leaden sinking feeling spread through me again. It is hard to explain how quickly a tiny thing can become unbearable when you're alone. If someone else had been there, I'd probably have rolled my eyes and pushed it shut. Alone, it felt like a message. I told myself to stop being stupid and cross the landing. I pushed the door fully open and flicked on the light. Nothing, of course. Same narrow bed, same chest of drawers, same cheap floral curtains. My bag where I'd left it. But the room felt colder than the rest of the house, cold enough that the skin on my arms tightened. I stepped inside and noticed the window. The glass was misted from the outside rain, but in the lower corner, on the inside, there was a round, clear patch as if someone had pressed a warm palm there for a long time. Beneath the window, on the sill, sat a dead blue bottle and a neat little crescent of dark grit, like earth. I didn't sleep much that night, not because anything openly terrible happened, but because the whole house had turned into one long-held breath. I left the lamp on in the spare room and got into bed feeling stupid and childish and far too alert. The mattress springs were awful, and every time I moved they gave a little metallic complaint. Rain tapped lightly on the glass. Somewhere in the walls a pipe gave a hollow knock. Around midnight, I almost convinced myself I was calming down. I even started drifting off once or twice. Then a bit later, I heard something in the hallway outside my room. Not footsteps exactly, softer than that. A faint sliding sound like wet fabric being pulled over wood. I went rigid. I listened. It came again, starting near the stairs and moving slowly along the landing towards my door. I remember the exact thought I had then, because it was so bizarrely practical. If that's a leak, it's a very deliberate leak. I stared at the strip of yellow light beneath the bedroom door, willing a shadow to pass under it, and at the same time praying that none would. The sound stopped just outside. I was so frightened at that point that I couldn't even sit up. I just lay there with my hands clenched in the duvet, listening to the silence on the other side of the door. It went on for maybe 10 seconds, maybe 20. Then the floorboard immediately outside gave a tiny, careful creak, and a man's voice, low and familiar in that dreadful way voices can be, even when they belong to no one you know, said very softly, "You shouldn't sleep in this room." I don't mind admitting that I started crying then. Not loudly, just out of pure shock. My whole body went cold and numb at once. I wanted to shout or move or grab my phone, and I couldn't seem to do any of it. The voice hadn't sounded angry. That was the worst part. It had sounded calm, almost concerned, as though it had been standing outside listening to me breathe and had finally decided to speak. I stayed like that for what felt like hours, though it can only have been minutes, until the rain got heavier and the sound of it finally drowned out everything else. At some point, I did manage to snatch my phone from the bedside table. No signal, just one bar flickering in and out. I typed a message to Daniel anyway. Something's wrong in this house. It failed to send 3 times. Eventually, maybe closer to morning, exhaustion took over. But before I slept, I remember one last thing. I was lying on my side facing the lamp, eyes half open, when I heard a soft tap from the window. Just one. Then another, and another, slow, patient, like knuckles on glass from 2 floors up. That was my first night in my aunt's house on Blackwater Road. And even then, before I knew anything about the boarded house next door, before the landing, before the wall under the stairs, before anyone told me what happened there in the rain, I already had the feeling that the house wasn't trying to frighten me away. It was trying to let me know I'd arrived. I didn't leave the next morning. I probably should have, but that's the thing about fear when it starts small. It doesn't always push you out the door. Sometimes it keeps you exactly where you are, trying to prove to yourself that you're not the sort of person who runs from a voice in the night. I woke late, stiff and foggy, the kind of sleep where you're not sure if you actually rested or just stopped moving for a few hours. For a few seconds, lying there, everything felt normal again. Gray light through the curtains, the hum of a distant car somewhere on the road, the faint ticking of the radiator. I honestly thought I'd imagined it all, that the voice, the knocking, the breath at the door, it had all just been my brain turning a quiet house into something else because I was alone. But then I turned my head. The bedroom door was open, not slightly, not the way I'd found it the night before, properly open, wide enough that I could see straight onto the landing. I was absolutely certain I'd shut it before I fell asleep. I remember doing it because I didn't want to see the dark hallway, didn't want to imagine anything standing there, and yet there it was, open as if someone had stepped out and forgotten to close it behind them. I stayed still for a moment, just watching it, waiting for something to move. Nothing did. The house felt calm again. Too calm, actually. Like it had already done something and was now just sitting back, waiting to see if I'd noticed. I got up slowly, trying to keep my breathing steady, and stepped onto the landing. The air felt colder than it had the night before, that same faint, damp smell clinging to it. Not strong, just enough that you noticed it without wanting to admit it meant anything. "Right," I said quietly, more to fill the silence than anything else. "Enough of that." I went straight to the bathroom, turned the light on, and splashed water on my face like that would somehow reset everything. When I looked up at myself in the mirror, I looked off. Pale, obviously. Eyes a bit too wide, like I hadn't quite caught up with my own body yet. I laughed under my breath again, but it sounded forced. "Just a house," I said. "Old house. Weird noises. That's it." And for a little while, I almost believed it. I made toast, put the kettle on, opened the curtains in the front room to let in what little daylight there was. Outside, Blackwater Road looked even more miserable in the morning. Wet pavement, bins lined up crookedly, no one about. It felt like a Sunday, even though it wasn't. Quiet in a way that didn't feel restful. I texted Daniel again. "You awake?" Weird night. This time it sent. No reply. I carried my tea into the hallway, and that's when I saw it. The floorboards at the top of the stairs were wet. Not soaked, not like someone had spilled a drink. Just marked. Darker than the rest of the wood, in a pattern that didn't make sense until I stepped closer. I crouched down slowly, the mug still in my hand, and stared at it. Footprints. Bare ones. Not clean, neat prints either. The edges were blurred, like whatever had made them had been dripping. They started just outside the spare room, crossed the landing, and stopped right at the top step. I followed them with my eyes, my stomach tightening without me even realizing it. There were maybe 6, 7 impressions in total. Long toes, narrow heel, slightly too long to be a child's, but wrong somehow for an adult. I remember thinking, no, that's not real. I actually reached out and touched one. The wood was cold, damp. My fingers came away slightly wet. I stood up too quickly, sloshing tea over the side of the mug, and backed away from the stairs like the floor might give out under me. My first thought, ridiculous as it sounds now, was that someone had broken in, that someone had come up the stairs while I was asleep, walked across the landing, and then just vanished. But there was no sign of forced entry. The front door was still locked. The chain was still on. The back door hadn't been touched. Every window I checked was shut tight, and those footprints, they didn't go down the stairs. They ended there. Like whoever or whatever had reached the edge had simply stopped existing. I spent the next half hour going through the house again, room by room, trying to prove to myself that there was a logical explanation. I opened every cupboard, checked under the beds, even looked behind the shower curtain like an idiot, heart hammering, half expecting to find someone crouched there staring back at me. Nothing. Just me and the house. By the time I came back to the landing, the footprints had already begun to fade. The dampness was drying out, the edges of the marks softening into the grain of the wood until they barely looked like anything at all. I actually felt a strange kind of panic then. Not relief, panic, because it meant I couldn't prove it had happened. Right, I said again, louder this time. No, enough. I grabbed my phone and rang Daniel. He picked up on the third ring. All right? Did you come by last night? I asked immediately. There was a pause. What? Did you come round or send someone or anything like that? No, he said slowly. Why would I? Leah, what's going on? I looked down at the landing. The marks were almost gone now, just faint shadows where they'd been. I heard someone, I said, in the house. And there were, I don't know, it's probably nothing. I'm just, Leah. Something in his voice changed, not joking anymore. You're not messing with me, are you? No. Another pause, longer this time. Check the doors, he said, all of them. I have, they're locked. Windows? Locked, right? He exhaled slowly. It's probably just the house. Old places do weird things in this weather. Footprints don't, I said before I could stop myself. Silence. What? He said, quieter. I hesitated. I almost didn't tell him, because saying it out loud made it sound ridiculous, made it sound like I was exactly the kind of person who scared herself in empty houses. On the landing, I said. This morning, bare footprints, wet ones, they just stopped at the stairs. He didn't reply straight away. Daniel? I'm coming round, he said. You don't have to. I'm coming round, he repeated. Give me 20 minutes. The line clicked dead. I stood there in the middle of the hallway, phone still in my hand, listening to the quiet settle back in around me. For a moment I felt better, not safe exactly, but less alone. Then from somewhere above me I heard a soft, deliberate creak. Not the settling of wood this time, not the random noise of an old house. A step. I froze. The attic hatch was directly above the landing, a square outline in the ceiling with a thin pull cord hanging down. I stared at it, every muscle in my body locked in place. Another creak, slower, heavier, as if something had shifted its weight up there, directly above where I was standing. I swallowed hard. Hello? I called, my voice barely holding. Nothing. I told myself not to be stupid. There was no one in the attic. It was probably just expansion or water or something in the roof. Something explainable. I took a step back anyway. Then I heard it. Right above me, a low, wet sound, like someone dragging something across wood. And then very softly, so close it felt like it was coming through the ceiling itself. That's a good girl. My whole body went numb. It wasn't loud, it wasn't aggressive. It was calm, familiar, almost approving, and it was not Daniel. I didn't wait after that. I grabbed my keys, my phone, and I was halfway down the stairs before I even realized I'd started moving. My heart was hammering so hard it made everything feel distant, like I was hearing it through water. But just as I reached the front door, hand on the lock, I stopped, because behind me, on the landing, I heard the first wet footprint land on the top step. Slow, deliberate, coming down. And in that moment, with the house completely silent, except for that sound. I understood something I hadn't wanted to admit since the night before. Whatever had spoken to me wasn't leaving the house. It had just been waiting for me to realize it was already inside. I don't remember unlocking the front door. One second I was standing there, staring at the handle, listening to that slow, wet step behind me, and the next I was outside on the path, the cold rain hitting my face hard enough to snap something back into place. I slammed the door shut behind me and fumbled with the key, hands shaking so badly I dropped it once, then twice. By the time I got the lock turned, I was breathing like I'd been running. I pressed my forehead against the wood for a second, just trying to steady myself. Right, you're outside, I muttered. You're fine. But even as I said it, I knew that wasn't true, because from the other side of the door, I could still hear it. Not footsteps now, not quite. More like something settling, a faint shifting weight right up against the inside of the door, as if whatever had come down the stairs had stopped exactly where I was standing moments before. I didn't wait to confirm it. I stepped back off the path into the street, rain soaking through my clothes almost instantly. I kept my eyes on the door, half expecting the handle to move, for it to open slowly from the inside. It didn't. The house just stood there, still and ordinary again. Same peeling paint, same clouded glass, same quiet little terrace like every other one on the row. If anyone had walked past at that moment, they'd have seen nothing wrong. That's what got to me the most. I stayed out there for maybe 5 minutes, just pacing up and down the pavement, trying to slow my breathing, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The logical part of my brain was still fighting, telling me it was stress, lack of sleep, the weather, the isolation, but the rest of me, the part that had heard that voice right above my head, that part knew. Something was in that house, and it knew I was there. A car pulled up at the end of the street, headlights cutting through the rain, and I almost jumped out of my skin. It was just someone parking, nothing to do with me, but I realized then how exposed I was just standing there, alone, soaked, staring at a house like it might come alive. I checked my phone, no new messages. I typed quickly, "Hurry up." It sent. I looked back at the front door, still closed, still quiet. And then, just for a second, so quick I almost convinced myself it hadn't happened, I saw something move behind the glass. Not a full figure, not even a shape I could describe properly. Just a shift. Like something had leaned slightly into the frosted panel from the inside, close enough to distort the light. I stepped back without thinking. "Don't," I whispered, even though I didn't know who I was talking to. The shape didn't come again, but the feeling stayed. That sense of being watched. Not from outside, not from across the street, but from just behind that door. Patient, quiet, waiting for me to make a mistake. I didn't go back in. I stood on the pavement, arms wrapped around myself, until I saw Daniel's car turn into the street. He pulled up too fast, tires splashing through the water, and jumped out before the engine had even properly cut. "Leah." "I'm not going back in," I said immediately. He stopped a few feet away, taking me in. "What happened? There's something in there." He gave a short, uneasy laugh. "Right, okay, start from the beginning." "No," I cut in, sharper than I meant to. "I heard it. It spoke to me. It was upstairs, and then it came down the stairs." His expression shifted then. Not disbelief, not exactly, just uncertainty. "You're sure it wasn't someone?" he asked. "Someone messing about, or—" "There's no one in there," I said. "I checked everything. I hesitated, trying to explain it in a way that didn't make me sound completely unhinged. It knew I was there. It was talking like it knew me. That last part seemed to land. He glanced at the house, then back at me. "What did it say?" I swallowed. "It said, 'That's a good girl.'" The rain filled the silence between us for a moment. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. "Right. Okay." That was his way of dealing with things he didn't understand. Say okay like it meant something. "I'm going in," he said after a second. "No," I said immediately. "I'm just going to have a look." "Daniel, if there's someone in there, we need to know. And if there's not, then you're not staying out here all day in the rain, are you?" I shook my head. "You didn't hear it." "No, I didn't," he said, softer now, "which is why I need to check." Before I could argue again, he stepped past me and reached for the door. I grabbed his arm. "Don't just walk in." He looked at me properly then, not annoyed, not dismissive, concerned. Stay here, he said quietly. If anything's off, I come straight back out. Yeah? I didn't like it, not even slightly, but I nodded. He unlocked the door, pushed it open slowly, and stepped inside. The hallway swallowed him almost immediately. The light from outside didn't reach very far in, and the interior of the house seemed darker than it should have been for that time of day. Hello? He called. His voice sounded normal, solid, real, no answer. He stepped further in. I stayed on the pavement, watching the doorway like it was the mouth of something that might close without warning. Leah? He called back. There's nothing. He stopped. I saw it happen. He froze mid-step, just inside the hallway. Daniel? I said, my voice tightening. He didn't respond. Daniel. Slowly, very slowly, he turned his head towards the staircase. I couldn't see his face properly from where I was standing. Just the angle of his shoulders, the way his posture changed, like he just heard something. Do you hear that? He said. My stomach dropped. Hear what? There was a pause. Then he spoke again, quieter now. Someone's upstairs. No, I said immediately. There's no one. I can hear them, he said. Leah, there's... He stopped again, and then from inside the house, clear enough that I heard it from the street, a voice. Not Daniel's, not mine, not anyone I knew. Soft, calm, close. Come up here. Everything in me went cold. Daniel, get out, I said louder now. Get out of the house. But he didn't move. He took one step towards the stairs, then another. Daniel, I said, my voice shaking. That's not. I know that voice, he said. That stopped me. What? I know it, he repeated, more certain now. He took another step. Daniel, stop. He didn't. He reached the bottom of the stairs and placed his foot on the first step, and that's when I saw it. Just behind him on the hallway floor, a wet footprint appeared. Out of nowhere, dark, fresh, pressing itself into the wood as if something invisible had just stepped down. Right behind him. Daniel, I whispered. Another footprint. Closer, following him. He didn't notice. He was staring up the staircase, completely focused on something I couldn't see. It's my mom, he said. My chest tightened. Daniel, your mom's not... I know her voice, he said, almost irritated now. Why would she? Another step, another footprint, right behind him, climbing the stairs. Whatever was in that house wasn't just speaking anymore. It was walking, and Daniel was going straight towards it. Daniel, she's not there. I don't think I've ever heard my own voice sound like that before. It didn't even sound like me. It came out thin and strained, like it was being forced through something too tight. He paused halfway up the stairs, just for a second. And in that second, I thought I'd reached him. I thought whatever hold that voice had on him might break. But then he tilted his head slightly, like he was listening more carefully, and something in his expression changed. Softened. Yeah, he said quietly. I'm coming. My stomach dropped. Daniel, no, listen to me. He didn't turn around, didn't look back. He just kept climbing, one slow step at a time, like he was being drawn upward by something gentle and patient. Behind him, the footprints followed. I could see them clearly now from the doorway. Wet impressions appearing one after another on the stairs, perfectly in time with his movements, but just a fraction delayed, like whatever was making them was keeping pace with him, from just behind. I couldn't just stand there. I ran inside. The moment I crossed the threshold, the air hit me again. That damp, earthy smell, thicker now, heavier, like the house had been holding it back while I was outside, and now I'd stepped back into it. Daniel, I shouted. My voice echoed up the narrow staircase. He didn't answer. I reached the bottom step and hesitated. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me not to go up there, but the thought of him walking into whatever was waiting at the top was worse. I took the first step. The wood was cold beneath my foot. Second step. The smell got stronger. Third, a sound, right above me. Not a voice this time. Something wet shifting across the floorboards. I stopped. Daniel, I said again, quieter now. Please just come down. For a moment there was nothing. Then his voice. From the top of the stairs, but wrong. Flat. Slightly off. Like someone had heard him speak once and was trying to get it right. Leah, I froze. That's not you, I whispered. Silence. Then, come up. The same tone, the same calm delivery, but not him. I took a slow step back down. No, I said more firmly this time. You come down. There was a pause, and then from just above the landing, a different voice, soft, familiar. Leah, it's all right. My heart lurched. I knew that voice. I hadn't heard it in years, not properly, not out loud like that. My dad. Every part of me reacted before I could stop it. My chest tightened, my throat closed, and for a split second, just one, I wanted to believe it. I wanted to run up those stairs, but something else cut through it. A detail. A small, wrong detail. My dad had never said my name like that, never stretched it out, never softened it into something almost coaxing. He always said it quick, casual, like it didn't need emphasis. This voice lingered, like it was trying too hard. No, I said again, louder now, shaking my head even though I couldn't see anything above me. No, that's not. The voice changed instantly, dropped the softness, flattened. Why not? That snapped something in me, because it wasn't confused, it wasn't asking, it was testing. I stumbled back down the stairs, nearly slipping on one of the damp steps, and didn't stop until I was back in the hallway. My whole body was shaking now, not just from fear, but from the effort of holding on to what was real. "Daniel," I shouted again. This time, there was movement above. Fast, heavy, not footsteps, more like something shifting its weight suddenly. Then, silence. I stood there, breathing hard, staring up the staircase, waiting. A few seconds passed, then I heard it. A slow creak, not above, behind me. I turned. The hallway, the front door, still closed. But the floor... Another wet footprint had appeared, right in the middle of the hall, facing me. My stomach twisted, because this one wasn't following anyone. It was standing still. And then, another, just in front of it, closer. I backed up instinctively. "No," I whispered. Another step, closer, each print forming slowly, pressing into the wood as if something unseen was placing its full weight down, 1 foot at a time, coming towards me. I couldn't hear breathing, couldn't hear movement. Just those soft, wet impressions appearing one after another. I stumbled backwards until my hand hit the wall. "Stop," I said, louder now. "Just stop." The footprints didn't. They reached the edge of the rug in the hallway and stopped, right in front of me. Close enough that if something had been there visible, I would have been looking straight at it. The air shifted, subtly, like someone leaning in. And then, right beside my ear, a whisper. So polite, I screamed. Properly screamed. Not controlled, not quiet, just pure, instinctive noise tearing out of me. I shoved past the empty space in front of me and ran for the door, hands fumbling at the lock again, not even caring if I dropped the keys this time. Behind me, laughter. Low, not loud, but close, too close. The door finally gave and I stumbled out into the rain again, slipping on the step and catching myself hard on the wall. "Leah," Daniel's voice. Real this time. I looked up. He was at the top of the stairs. No, not quite. He was standing halfway down now, gripping the banisters, staring at me like he'd just woken up. "What?" he started. Then he looked down, at the stairs, at the wet marks trailing up behind him, his face drained. "Leah," he said slowly, "what is that?" I shook my head, backing further into the street. "Get out," I said. "Now. Just get out." He didn't argue this time. He came down the rest of the stairs quickly, avoiding the marks like he didn't want to touch them, and pushed through the door into the rain. We stood there together, both soaked, both breathing hard, staring back at the house. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. Finally, he said, "I heard her." I looked at him. "My mom," he said. "She was upstairs. I swear to you, Leah, I heard her. Clear as anything." I swallowed. "What did she say?" He hesitated. "Then she told me I'd left her there." The rain filled the silence again, heavy now, louder than before. I turned my gaze back to the front door. It was still slightly open from where we'd come out, and slowly, very slowly, it began to close. Not slammed, not pushed, just drawn shut. As if something inside had reached out and pulled it gently into place, the latch clicked. And just like that, the house went still again, like nothing had happened. But everything had, because now it wasn't just me. Now Daniel had heard it too, and whatever was inside that house wasn't just trying to scare us anymore. It was learning us, and it was getting better. We didn't go back in. Not straight away. We stood there in the rain like idiots, just staring at the house as if it might do something else, like it might explain itself, or give us something we could actually understand. It didn't. Number 16 just sat there, quiet again, like it had settled after a disturbance, like whatever had happened inside was finished, for now. Daniel dragged a hand over his face, water dripping from his hair. "Right," he said, but there was no confidence in it anymore. "Right? Okay. That wasn't your mom," I said. He didn't answer immediately. I watched him closely because something about him had changed. Not completely, not in a way I could point to, but enough that it made me uneasy. His eyes kept flicking back to the upstairs window like part of him was still trying to listen. "Daniel," I said more firmly, "that wasn't her." "I know," he said quickly. Too quickly. I stepped closer. "Then why did you go up?" He hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. "It sounded like her," he said at last, quieter now. Not just like a voice. It sounded like... He stopped, searching for it. Like I'd left her waiting. Like I'd forgotten something important. My stomach tightened. "Yeah," I said. "It does that." He frowned slightly. "Does what?" "It doesn't just copy voices," I said. "It knows how to say things." That landed harder than anything else. Because it meant this wasn't random. It wasn't just noise in an old house. It was targeted. Daniel looked back at the house again, and this time there was something else in his expression. Not disbelief. Not even fear exactly. Recognition. "I thought it was upstairs," he said slowly, "in one of the rooms. But when I got halfway up, it sounded like it moved." I swallowed. "Moved where?" He pointed slightly. "Behind me." The rain seemed to get louder for a moment, or maybe it was just the way the words hit. "That's when I heard you shouting," he added. And then, I don't know, it just stopped. We both stood there again, letting that settle, because that changed things. Up until that point, I'd been trying to tell myself there were limits, that whatever this was, it stayed in certain places, certain rooms, certain parts of the house, but if it could move, if it could follow, then none of that mattered. "Right," Daniel said suddenly, more firmly now, like he was forcing himself back into control. "We're not just standing out here. We need to figure out what this is." I let out a short, shaky laugh. "Figure it out? What, like we're gonna knock and ask it what it wants?" He ignored that. "You said this started last night?" "Yeah." "And nothing before that? No weird stuff when your aunt was here?" "I don't know," I said. "She never mentioned anything. But she wouldn't, would she?" He nodded slightly. "Fair." We both looked at the house again. "I'm not staying in there tonight," I said. "No," he agreed. "You're not." There was another pause. "But we need to go back in," he added. I stared at him. "No. Leah, no, absolutely not. If there's something wrong with the house, there is something wrong with the house. I mean properly wrong," he said, pushing on. "Like something we can actually fix. A leak, wiring, something structural." "Daniel," I cut in, my voice tightening again. "It spoke to us." He stopped. Because there was no arguing around that. It hadn't just made noise. It had spoken, and worse, it had spoken like people we knew. He exhaled slowly. "I know." "Then why are you acting like this is fixable?" He didn't answer straight away. Instead, he glanced up at the second floor window. And for a moment, I thought I saw the same thing I'd seen earlier. A shift behind the glass. Not a full shape. Not clear enough to describe. But something that shouldn't have been there. I grabbed his arm. "Did you see that?" He followed my gaze, squinting slightly. "See what?" "There." I pointed. Nothing. Just the dull reflection of the gray sky and the faint outline of the room behind it. I lowered my hand slowly. "It's watching," I said under my breath. Daniel didn't respond to that. Not because he disagreed, because he didn't want to say it out loud. We stood there for another minute, both of us thinking the same thing and neither of us wanting to be the one to confirm it. Finally, he said, "We go in together." I shook my head immediately. "We stay near the front," he continued. "We don't go upstairs. We just check a few things, grab what you need, and get out." "No," I said again, but it came out weaker this time. Because part of me knew he was right. I couldn't just leave everything there. My stuff, my aunt's things, the house itself, and something else too. A question. Because whatever that thing was, it wasn't random. It had chosen words carefully. It had chosen us carefully. And that meant there was a reason. "What if it follows us?" I asked quietly. Daniel looked at me, then back at the house, then back at me again. "I don't think it can," he said. "You don't know that." "No," he admitted, "but it didn't come out when you did." I swallowed. "That doesn't mean it won't." Another pause. "Then we don't give it the chance," he said. I didn't like that answer. Not even slightly. But I also didn't have a better one. So slowly, reluctantly, I nodded. 5 minutes, I said. "That's it." 5 minutes, he agreed. We approached the door together this time. Everything in my body was tense, every step feeling heavier than it should have. The closer we got, the more that smell returned. Damp earth, cold and thick, like something buried too long had started to surface. Daniel reached for the handle, hesitated, then pushed the door open. The hallway looked exactly the same as before. No footprints, no movement, no sign that anything had happened. And somehow that was worse, because it meant whatever had been there wasn't leaving evidence anymore. We stepped inside together. The air felt different, not just cold, occupied, like we'd walked into a room where a conversation had just stopped. Daniel shut the door behind us slowly. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to, because we both felt it. The house wasn't reacting to us anymore. It wasn't trying to scare us. It wasn't even hiding. It was waiting. And this time, it knew we understood that. For a second, just one, I thought I was going to faint. Not from fear exactly, but from the sheer overload of it. The light, the footprints, the voices layered on top of each other like something trying too many versions of the same sentence at once. My brain couldn't process it fast enough. You stayed. It echoed again, quieter this time. Not from one place, from everywhere. Daniel grabbed my arm hard. Don't look at it. I'm not. Leah, don't. But I already had. Not directly, not clearly. Just the edge of it. Right in front of the door where the last set of footprints had formed. The air there looked wrong. Like heat rising off tarmac, but colder. Distorting the space just enough that you couldn't focus on it properly. I blinked hard and forced my gaze down to the floor. Open the door, I said. My voice sounded distant. Daniel didn't move. Open it, I repeated, sharper now. He swallowed. It's right there. I know. It's standing there. I know. Another pause. The voices shifted slightly. Still layered. Still wrong. But you came back. My skin crawled. Daniel, I said, not taking my eyes off the floor. If we don't move now, I know, he said quickly. He let go of my arm and stepped forward, carefully, slowly, like he was trying not to disturb something. The footprints didn't move. The shape in the air didn't change, just stayed there, waiting. Daniel reached the door. His hand hovered over the handle. For a split second, everything went completely silent. No rain, no voices, no movement, nothing. And then the handle turned, not by him, by itself. Slow, deliberate. I felt my heart stop. The door creaked open a few inches. Cold air pushed in from outside, and just like that, the pressure in the hallway broke. The distortion vanished. The footprints stopped forming. The voices cut off mid-breath. Daniel didn't hesitate. He grabbed the door and yanked it open fully. Now! We ran. Neither of us looked back. We didn't stop until we were halfway down the street, rain soaking through us again, lungs burning, shoes slipping on the wet pavement. Only then did we slow. Only then did we turn. Number 16 stood exactly where it always had. Door slightly open now. Still. Empty. Silent. Like nothing had happened. I bent over, hands on my knees, trying to catch my breath. What the hell was that? Daniel said, his voice unsteady. I shook my head. I don't know, I said. But it let us go. He straightened slowly. Let us? You saw it, I said. It was blocking the door, and then it opened it, he finished. We both looked back at the house. Neither of us said what we were thinking, because saying it out loud would make it real. It hadn't been trying to trap us, not exactly. It had been testing us, seeing what we would do. And when we did it, when we stayed, it changed. Right, Daniel said after a moment, forcing some steadiness back into his voice. We're not going back in there. No, I agreed immediately. Not today, not tonight, not ever if we can help it. I nodded. But even as I did, something in my chest twisted, because we couldn't just leave it. Not completely. My aunt's things were still inside. Everything she owned, everything she trusted me to look after. And worse, whatever that thing was, it wasn't finished. I could feel it, even standing out there in the rain. That same awareness, that same attention, still on us. Daniel checked his phone. No signal, he muttered. Great. Same, I said, holding mine up. The screen flickered between one bar and none. Let's go somewhere else, he said. Get out of this street. I didn't argue. We walked quickly, not quite running this time, but not slowing down either. The further we got from Blackwater Road, the more the air seemed to lighten. The rain didn't feel as heavy. The silence didn't feel as thick. By the time we reached the main road, it almost felt normal again. Almost. We ducked into a small cafe on the corner, the kind of place that always smells like burnt toast and cheap coffee. There were only 2 other people inside, both of them barely looking up as we came in, dripping wet and clearly shaken. We sat down at a table near the window. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Daniel let out a breath. Okay, okay, I echoed, though it didn't feel okay. We need to think about this properly. Yeah, he leaned forward slightly. Start from the beginning, everything, no skipping bits. I hesitated, because saying it all out loud again would make it real in a different way. But I nodded, and I told him, the voice in the hallway, the breath at the door, the footprints, the window, everything. He didn't interrupt, didn't joke, didn't question. He just listened. And when I finished, he said very quietly, "It's not just in the house." I looked at him. "What do you mean?" He swallowed. "When I was on the stairs before you came in." He paused, like he wasn't sure he should say it. "Daniel," he met my eyes. "I could feel it behind me," he said. "Not hear it, not see it, just feel it." My chest tightened, like it was right there, he continued. Close enough that if I had turned around, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. We both knew. And when I got to the middle of the stairs, he added, it didn't feel like it was in the house anymore. A cold weight settled in my stomach. What? It felt like it was around me, he said. Not in a room, not in a place, just there. I shook my head. No, it stayed inside. It didn't follow us out. Are you sure? I hesitated because I wanted to say yes. I needed to say yes. But then something flickered in the window beside us. I turned my head slightly. The glass reflected the street behind us, the rain, the passing cars, and for just a second, a shape, standing directly behind our table. I turned fully, nothing there, just empty space. I looked back at Daniel. He was already staring at me. You saw it too, he said. I didn't answer, because in that moment, I realized something that made everything worse. It hadn't followed us, not properly, but it hadn't stayed behind either. It didn't need to, because whatever that thing was, it wasn't tied to the house. The house was just where we'd found it, and now it knew us. And that meant it didn't have to stay in one place anymore. We didn't stay in the cafe long after that. Neither of us said it outright, but once you've seen something where it shouldn't be, even for a second, you stop trusting places. Even somewhere bright, warm, and full of normal people starts to feel like a stage set, like it could shift at any moment. Daniel paid. I didn't argue. My hands were still shaking too much to hold anything steady. Library's not far, he said, as we stepped back out into the rain. Library? I repeated. If there's anything about that house, history, reports, anything, it'll be there, or in the archives upstairs. I hesitated. The idea of going towards answers didn't feel comforting. It felt like leaning into something we didn't understand. But standing still felt worse. Fine, I said, but we don't go back there today. We're not going back there, he said. There was a slight pause. Not unless we have to. I didn't like that. We walked in silence most of the way. The town center wasn't busy. Just a few people moving under umbrellas, shops half open, the usual gray shuffle of a place that had seen better days. But even surrounded by that normality, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Every reflective surface caught my attention. Every window, every puddle, every dark bit of glass. I found myself checking them without meaning to. Not for someone following us, for something else. You keep doing that, Daniel said suddenly. What? Looking behind us. I'm not? You are. I stopped. Do you feel it? I asked. He didn't answer straight away. Then, yeah. That was enough. We didn't say anything else about it. The library sat at the far end of the high street, a squat brick building that looked like it hadn't been updated since the late 80s. Inside, it was warm, quiet, and smelled faintly of old paper and carpet cleaner. It should have felt safe. It didn't. We went straight to the desk. A woman in her 60s looked up at us, glasses low on her nose, expression already halfway between polite and uninterested. Can I help? She asked. Daniel stepped forward. Yeah, we're looking for any records on Blackwater Row, specifically number 16 and 14. Her expression changed, not dramatically, just enough that I noticed. That street, she said slowly. Yeah. She looked between us for a moment. You're not from around here, are you? I am, Daniel said. Sort of, family is. She nodded slightly, then stood. Archives are upstairs, she said, but you won't find much that's official. What do you mean? I asked. She gave a small, tight smile. Depends what you're looking for. That didn't answer anything, but she turned and gestured for us to follow. We went up a narrow staircase to a quieter section of the building. Rows of old files, microfilm machines, stacks of local papers bound together in thick volumes. She led us to a table. Start with the 70s, she said. That's when most of it happened. Most of what? I asked. She didn't answer directly. Instead, she pulled a file from a shelf and set it down in front of us. Ashcombe Mere, she said. The name meant nothing to me, but something in the way she said it, like it should. Daniel frowned. What's that? She adjusted her glasses. Before your terrace was built, she said, that whole area was lower ground. There was a reservoir just beyond it, not large, but deep. I felt something tighten in my chest. What happened? I asked. She hesitated. Then, it failed. The word hung there. Failed. Not burst, not broke. Failed. It was during a storm, she continued. Heavy rain. Ground gave way. The water came down through that part of town before anyone could react properly. I glanced at Daniel. Neither of us said anything. They lost houses, she went on. Families, whole sections of the street. I swallowed. And they rebuilt? Eventually. On the same ground? She gave a slight nod. Cheaper than relocating, easier than explaining. Explaining what? Daniel asked. Another pause. Then, that some places don't settle properly after something like that. Silence. The rain tapped softly against the upstairs windows. Number 14, she said, tapping the file lightly, was one of the original rebuilds. And 16, I asked. Attached later, she replied. But close enough. Close enough. That phrase stuck. What about the people? Daniel asked. The ones who lived there after? Her expression shifted again. This time it wasn't just caution. It was something else. Recognition. You've heard something, haven't you? She said quietly. Neither of us answered. She studied us for a moment, then leaned in slightly. Voices? She asked. My throat tightened. Daniel didn't respond. People calling your name? She added. I nodded before I could stop myself. Her gaze softened slightly. Not sympathy. Understanding. They all said that, she murmured. All who? Daniel asked. The ones who stayed. A chill ran through me. What do you mean stayed? She sat back slowly. There were reports, she said, after the rebuild. Not official ones, just local talk, people hearing things, seeing things, nothing that could be proven. Like what? I asked. She hesitated. Then they said the voices weren't random, she said. They knew things, personal things, things they shouldn't have known. I felt my hands curl slightly on the table. They said it sounded like people they'd lost, she continued. Family, friends, people who weren't there anymore. Daniel exhaled slowly. Right, but that's not the part that matters, she added. What is? I asked. She met my eyes. They said it didn't start that way. The air felt heavier suddenly. What do you mean? Daniel asked. At first, she said, it sounded like strangers. A pause. Then neighbors. Another pause. Then people they trusted. I felt something shift inside me, because that matched. Exactly. And after that, I asked, my voice quieter now. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked past us, at the window, at the rain, then back at me. They stopped talking about it. That wasn't an answer. That's it? Daniel said. They just stopped? She nodded slightly. Some moved away, she said. Some stayed, but the stories changed. How? I asked. Her voice dropped. They stopped saying they heard voices. A long silence followed. And what did they say instead? I whispered. She held my gaze. They said the house started answering back. Something cold settled in my chest. Daniel shifted slightly beside me. What does that mean? He asked. She didn't explain. Not properly. Instead, she reached into the file and pulled out a photograph. Old, black and white. A row of houses. Water pooled halfway up the doors. People standing in the street, watching. And in the reflection, in the water, there were shapes. Too many shapes. More than there should have been. I stared at it. That's not, I started. They're not reflections, she said quietly. My stomach turned. Those were taken after the flood receded, she added, when they were clearing the area. I couldn't look away, because once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. The shapes didn't match the people standing above. They were wrong, distorted, too many, too still, like something beneath the surface had been looking up. Some things don't leave with the water, she said. The words landed hard, because suddenly, everything made sense. The damp, the footprints, the voices, the way it moved. It wasn't just in the house. It had always been there, under it, waiting, and we hadn't found it. We just stepped onto it. Daniel pushed back slightly from the table. Right, he said, voice tight. That's good to know. I didn't move, because something else had just occurred to me. something worse. If it's tied to the ground, I said slowly. The woman looked at me. Then why is it following us? I finished. She didn't answer, not straight away. Instead, she looked past me, at the window behind us. Her expression changed, not curiosity, not confusion, recognition. The same look she'd had earlier, only stronger. Because, she said quietly, you listened. The room felt colder. I turned, slowly, toward the glass. And this time, I didn't just catch a glimpse, I saw it. Standing on the pavement outside the library. Not clear, not solid, but there, still, watching. And as I stared at it, it tilted its head slightly, like it had been waiting for me to notice. I didn't move. Not at first, because the moment you see something like that, properly see it, not just a flicker or a reflection, your brain does this strange thing where it tries to hold everything still. Like if you don't move, it won't either. Like you can somehow pause whatever's happening and figure it out before it changes. The figure outside the library didn't move either. It just stood there. Not in the middle of the pavement, not blocking the door. Off to the side, near the edge of the road where the water had collected in long, shallow pools. The kind of place no one would naturally stand. And it wasn't solid. That was the first thing that really got to me. It had shape, height, shoulders, something like a coat, but the edges didn't hold. They blurred into the rain, into the reflections on the ground, like it wasn't fully there or didn't need to be. Leah. Daniel's voice was quiet beside me. You're seeing it too, aren't you? I asked. He didn't answer, which was answer enough. Behind us, I heard the librarian shift slightly. Don't stare too long, she said. I didn't look back at her. Why? I whispered, because it learns quicker that way. That made my stomach turn. I forced myself to blink, just once, and when I looked again, it was closer, not by much, but enough that I knew it hadn't walked. It had just adjusted, like distance didn't work the same way for it. I stepped back from the window instinctively. Okay, Daniel said under his breath. We're not staying here. No, I agreed immediately. We moved toward the stairs without another word. I didn't look at the window again. I didn't want to see if it followed. The descent felt too slow. Every step creaked louder than it should have. Every sound in the building seemed sharper now. Pages turning somewhere below, a chair scraping, the soft hum of fluorescent lights overhead. All of it felt wrong. Too normal, like the world hadn't caught up to what we'd just seen. When we reached the ground floor, Daniel pushed the door open without hesitation. Rain hit us immediately, cold, sharp, real. For a moment I focused on that, on the feel of it on my skin, the sound of it hitting the pavement, just to anchor myself. Then I looked up. The pavement outside the library, empty. The place where the figure had stood, clear. No distortion, no shape, no trace of anything. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. It's gone, I said. Daniel didn't relax. It's not gone, he said. It's just not there anymore. That was worse. We didn't linger. We walked fast, not quite running, back toward Blackwater Row. Neither of us said anything for the first few minutes. There was too much to process, and no part of it made sense in a way that words could fix. But the closer we got, the heavier it felt. That same pressure, that same awareness. Like stepping back into a place that had already noticed you once and wouldn't forget. You feel that? I asked quietly. Yeah, Daniel said. We slowed slightly as the row came into view. Number 16 stood where we'd left it. Door closed now. No sign that it had opened. No sign that anything had happened at all. But something else caught my attention. The yard. At the side of the house, the narrow strip that led around to the back. I stopped. What? Daniel asked. I pointed. At the far end of the yard, just beyond the broken washing line, there was someone standing there. This time, it wasn't a blur. It was clearer. Still not fully solid, still not something you could focus on directly, but the shape held better in the dim light. Tall, facing away from us, toward the wall, exactly like Daniel had described earlier. Listening, we both stood still. Neither of us spoke. Because if you spoke, you acknowledged it. And something told me it didn't need that. The rain fell around it, but didn't seem to touch it properly, didn't break its outline, like it existed slightly outside of everything else. What do we do? I whispered. Daniel didn't answer. His gaze was fixed on it. And then, without warning, he took a step forward. Daniel, no, hey, he called out. The word echoed slightly down the narrow space. The figure didn't react, didn't turn, didn't move. It just stayed. Daniel, I said again, sharper now. Don't. I want to see it properly, he said. You've seen it. Not properly. That same tone again, the one he'd had on the stairs. Focused, drawn, I grabbed his arm. Don't go near it. He didn't look at me. It's not doing anything. That doesn't mean. I just want to see what it is. You can't see what it is, I snapped. That's the point. He hesitated, just for a second. And in that second, the figure moved, not much, just a slight shift of its head, tilting, as if it had heard us. Daniel froze. Did you? Yeah, I whispered. Slowly, very slowly, the figure began to turn, not smoothly, not naturally. It didn't pivot like a person. It unfolded, like its shape wasn't meant to move that way, like it was adjusting itself into a position it hadn't used before. My stomach twisted. Don't look at it, I said. Too late. Daniel was already staring. The figure completed the turn, and for a moment, we saw it. Not clearly, not in full detail, but enough, where a face should have been. There was something wrong. Not blank, not empty, layered, like multiple expressions pressed into one place, shifting slightly over each other. Too many features, too many versions. And then it smiled. Not a normal smile, not even a human one, just a suggestion of one, something pulling at the shape where a mouth should be. Daniel stepped back, finally. Yeah, he said quietly. No. The figure didn't move toward us, didn't advance. It just stood there, watching, and then, in a blink, it was gone. Not faded, not walked away, just not there anymore. The space it had occupied snapped back into place like it had never been disturbed. The yard looked empty again, still, normal. Daniel let out a shaky breath. What the hell was that? I shook my head. But deep down, I already knew. Or at least, I understood something worse. It wasn't trying to hide from us anymore. It wasn't staying in the house. It wasn't bound to one place. It was choosing when to be seen. And when it wasn't just watching. It was reacting, learning, adapting, testing. And the way it had turned, the way it had smiled, that wasn't curiosity. That was recognition. Like it had seen something in us that it wanted or needed. I looked back at the house, at the door, at the quiet, still front of number 16. And for the first time since all of this started, I understood something clearly. We hadn't brought anything out with us. We hadn't disturbed something that was asleep. We hadn't triggered anything by accident. We had been noticed, and now it was deciding what to do with us. We didn't go into the yard straight away. After what we'd just seen, neither of us was eager to walk into the exact space where that thing had been standing seconds earlier. We stayed by the front step, both of us staring down the narrow passage like it might change again if we looked too long. It was waiting there, I said quietly. Daniel nodded once. Yeah. Facing the wall. Yeah. I swallowed. Why? He didn't answer. Because there wasn't a good answer. Just the feeling that it hadn't been random, that it had been doing something, listening, or waiting for something on the other side. The thought made my skin crawl. We're not going down there, I said. Daniel glanced at me. We need to check the house. I don't care about the house. We don't know what that thing is, he said. And right now, the only place it seems tied to is in there. It was just outside. It was near the house, he corrected. There's a difference. I didn't like that logic, but I couldn't argue it either, because if he was right, then the house wasn't just where this started. It was where it focused. And that meant, if we wanted answers, we were going back inside. I let out a slow breath. Fine, but we don't split up, he said immediately. I'm not leaving your side, I replied. That almost made him smile, almost. We stepped back through the front door together. This time, the house felt different. Not as active, not as pressing, but that didn't make it better. If anything, it made it worse, because instead of reacting, it felt like it was watching, quietly, carefully, like it had already learned enough not to show itself straight away. Stay near the front, I murmured. Daniel nodded. We moved slowly down the hallway, past the stairs, toward the cupboard under them. The same cupboard, the one we hadn't opened, the one that had spoken. It looked completely normal now. Still, closed, silent. I felt a tight knot form in my chest just looking at it. It came from in there, Daniel said. Yeah. So either there's something behind it, or it wants us to think there is, I finished. He glanced at me. You think it's tricking us? I think everything it's done so far has been deliberate, I said. So yeah, we stood there for a moment, neither of us moving, because this felt like a line. Once we opened that door, whatever was happening would change. Ready? He asked. No, I said honestly. Same. He reached for the handle, hesitated, then pulled it open. The cupboard was empty at first, just a narrow, shallow space. Old coats, a pair of boots, a broken umbrella leaning against the wall. Nothing out of place, nothing that explained anything. I exhaled slowly. See? Daniel said. Just wait. Something at the back, behind the coats, a shape that didn't match the rest, flat, square, wrong. I stepped closer, carefully, and pulled one of the coats aside, where the wall behind it wasn't a wall. It was patched, poorly. A section of plaster that didn't match the rest, darker, slightly uneven, like it had been covered over in a hurry. Daniel saw it too. That wasn't here before, he said. It was, I replied. We just didn't notice it. He reached out and pressed his hand against it. The surface gave slightly, not solid, hollow. We both looked at each other. Okay, he said slowly. That's not normal. No. He pushed harder. A dull, hollow thud echoed back. There was something behind it, something empty, something hidden. Step back, he said. Daniel, just step back. Reluctantly, I did. He grabbed the edge of the plaster, pulled. At first it didn't move. Then with a sharp crack, a section of it gave way. Dust spilled out, old, dry, the kind that hadn't been disturbed in years. He tore away more of it, and behind it, a gap, narrow, dark, leading further in, not into another room, into a space between. I felt my breath catch. That's not part of the house, I said. It is now, he replied. We both stared into it. The darkness inside didn't behave like normal shadow. It felt deeper, like it absorbed the light instead of just lacking it. Daniel pulled out his phone and turned the torch on. The beam cut into the space, revealing a narrow passage, bare brick walls, old, damp. The floor uneven, stained darker in patches that looked far too familiar. Watermarks, high up, nearly shoulder height. I felt something twist in my stomach. That's flood level, I said quietly. Daniel didn't reply. He stepped closer, shone the light further in. The passage led sideways, toward the adjoining house. Number 14. Leah, he said, I see it. That's not supposed to be there. I know. The beam shifted, caught something else, further in, on the floor. Small, round, scattered. Daniel frowned slightly. What are those? I stepped closer, too close, and then I saw marbles, dozens of them. Half sunk into the dark, damp floor, some clear, some colored, all dulled by age. My chest tightened. Those aren't recent, I said. No, and they're not just dropped. They were clustered, grouped, like they'd been left there, or played with. I felt a chill run through me. Daniel moved the light again, further, deeper, and then we saw it. A chair, small, wooden, set in the middle of the passage, facing us, not broken, not decayed, just there, waiting. Something about it felt wrong immediately. Not just because of where it was, because of how it was placed, centered, deliberate, like it had been set there for a reason. Don't go in, I said quickly. I'm not? He stopped, because the light had caught something else on the seat of the chair. Something small, metal, reflective. I squinted, my stomach dropped. No, Daniel looked at me. What? I stepped closer, heart pounding. That's not. I reached out, hands shaking, and picked it up. Cold, familiar, too familiar. My necklace, the one I'd lost years ago, after my dad died. I stared at it, my fingers tightening around it without me meaning to. That's not possible, Daniel said. I didn't answer, because I knew. I knew exactly where I'd last seen it, and it wasn't anywhere near this house. I swallowed hard. It didn't just learn voices, I said slowly. Daniel's expression shifted. What? It knows things, I said. Things it shouldn't. He looked back into the passage, at the chair, at the marbles, at the water-stained walls. And for the first time, I saw real fear in his face. Not confusion, not doubt, fear. He said quietly, yeah, we need to leave. I nodded. But neither of us moved, because something had just changed. Again, the house wasn't just reacting to us. It wasn't just copying us. It was reaching into us, pulling things out, memories, objects, pieces of our lives, and placing them where it wanted them. The passage felt colder now, the darkness deeper. And the chair, it didn't look empty anymore. Not exactly. It looked occupied, not by a body, but by something else, something that had been waiting there long before we opened that wall. And now it knew we'd found it. The air shifted slightly, subtle, but enough. And from somewhere inside that passage, something moved, not fast, not loud, just enough to let us know we weren't alone in there. We didn't speak for a few seconds, not because we didn't have anything to say, because anything we said would make it worse. The passage wasn't just a hidden part of the house anymore. It felt active, like opening that wall hadn't revealed something forgotten. It had interrupted something. Daniel slowly lowered his phone light, but not all the way. The beam still cut into the darkness just enough to keep that chair visible. "That moved," he said quietly. "Yeah." "You saw it?" "Yeah." Another silence. He took a step back. I didn't. Not immediately. I was still holding the necklace, still staring at it, because that was the part my brain couldn't let go of. That wasn't just something old. It wasn't just something from the house. It was mine, which meant whatever was in there wasn't limited to this place. "Leah," Daniel said, sharper now. "Come back." I blinked, realizing how close I was to the opening, how far I'd leaned in without noticing. I stepped back quickly. "Yeah, sorry." He didn't take his eyes off the passage. "Don't do that again." "I won't." But even as I said it, I felt it, that same pull. Not physical, not like something grabbing me, more like an awareness, like something inside that darkness had noticed the moment I stepped closer and hadn't wanted me to stop. "Close it," I said. Daniel didn't move. "Daniel, what if it comes out?" "It already has," I said. "That's not stopping it." He hesitated. Then, from inside the passage, a sound, soft, wet, dragging. Both of us froze. It wasn't loud, but it was close enough now that we could hear the texture of it, like something moving across the floor, slowly, deliberately, toward the opening. "Close it," I whispered. Daniel snapped into motion. He grabbed one of the broken plaster boards and shoved it back into place. Not perfectly, not sealed, but enough to block the view. The sound stopped, instantly, like it had been cut off. We stood there, breathing hard, listening. Nothing, no movement, no voice, just silence. "Okay," Daniel said, backing away. "We're done here." Yeah, we didn't argue this time. We didn't hesitate. We moved back into the hallway together, both of us avoiding looking at the cupboard as we passed it. But even without looking, I could feel it, that presence. Not just in the passage anymore, not just behind the wall, around us, in the house. And worse, paying attention. We reached the front room, stopped, because something felt off, different from before. "What?" Daniel asked quietly. I shook my head. "I don't know." But I did. Something had changed, not in the layout, not in anything physical, in the feeling, like the house had shifted its focus. Before, it had been testing, watching, trying. Now it felt like it understood something. "Say something," Daniel said suddenly. "What?" "Just anything." I frowned. "Why?" "Because I want to hear your voice." "That's weird. Just do it." I hesitated. Then hello, the word hung in the room. Normal, my voice, my tone, nothing strange. Daniel nodded slightly. "Okay." What was that about? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned his head slightly, listening. "To make sure," he said finally. "To make sure what?" He looked at that it's still you. My stomach tightened. "That's not funny. I'm not joking." Before I could respond, a voice came from the hallway. "Hello?" I froze, because it was mine, exactly mine. Same tone, same hesitation, same pitch. Daniel's face went completely still. "Okay," he said quietly. "That's new." The voice came again, from a different direction. "Hello?" This time from upstairs. I felt something cold slide through my chest. "It's copying us now," I whispered. "It was already doing that," Daniel said. "No, this is different, because it wasn't just using old voices, it was using us, now, in real time." Another voice from the kitchen. "Hello?" Then another from the stairs. "Hello?" Each one slightly off. Not enough to notice at first, but enough, if you listen closely, like something trying to refine it, practicing, improving. "Stop talking," Daniel said quickly. I wasn't. "Just don't say anything." We both went silent. The house followed. For a moment, nothing. Then, a single voice, right behind us, soft, perfect. "Leah," I turned. Too fast. There was no one there. Of course there wasn't, but the space felt occupied. Like something had just been standing close enough to touch. Daniel grabbed my arm. "Don't respond." I wasn't going to. "Good." Another pause. Then the voice again, this time layered, multiple tones, all mine, all slightly different, all the same. My chest tightened, because that wasn't something I'd said. That wasn't something it had copied. That was something new, something it had made. "It's learning faster," I said. Daniel nodded slowly. "Yeah, and it's not just copying anymore." "No." We stood there, listening, waiting, and then, from somewhere deeper in the house, a new voice, one we hadn't heard yet. Low, wet, not quite human. "Stay." The word stretched slightly, like it didn't sit properly in whatever was speaking it. I felt my whole body tense. Yeah, Daniel said immediately. We're leaving. We didn't argue, didn't hesitate. We moved for the door again. But this time, the house didn't stay quiet. As we crossed the hallway, the voices started. Not loud, not shouting, just whispering from every direction. Different tones, different speeds, some ours, some not, all saying the same thing. Stay, stay, stay. The word followed us, not chasing, not forcing, just repeating, like it didn't need to try anymore, like it already knew we'd heard enough. Daniel yanked the door open. We stepped out into the rain again. And as the door shut behind us, the voices stopped completely, like they'd never been there. We stood there, breathing hard, neither of us speaking, because we both understood now. It wasn't just in the house. It wasn't just in the walls. It wasn't even just in the voices. Whatever that thing was, it didn't just use voices. It lived in them. And the more we spoke, the more we gave it, the more real it became. We didn't go far this time, just to the edge of the street, far enough to put space between us and the house, not far enough to feel safe, because that word didn't apply anymore. Don't talk, Daniel said under his breath. I nodded, not because I fully understood it, but because something in me agreed. We stood there in the rain, both of us staring back at number 16, both of us trying to process the same thing at once. It wasn't just copying anymore. It was building, testing, refining, and every time we spoke, it got better. So what do we do? I asked finally, keeping my voice low. Daniel glanced at me, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. Seriously? I'm whispering. That doesn't matter. Then what does? He didn't answer, because he didn't know either. We stood there in silence for a moment, and then something changed, not outside, inside the house. At first it was subtle, a shift in the light behind the windows, a slight distortion, like something moving deeper in the rooms. I narrowed my eyes slightly. Do you see that? Daniel followed my gaze, the front window. The glass looked wrong. Not broken, not cracked, just distorted, like there was water on the inside. My stomach tightened. That's not rain, I said. No, he agreed quietly. We both watched, and then it started to spread, slowly, from the edges of the window. Darkness, not shadow. Something heavier, like water pooling behind the glass, but too thick, too slow. It didn't run. It gathered, rising. Daniel, I whispered. He didn't respond because he was already seeing it. The same thing, at the second window, then the third, all of them, filling from the inside, like the house was flooding. But there was no sound, no rushing water, no pressure, just movement, silent, steady. It's not possible, I said. It doesn't need to be, he replied. The water, or whatever it was, reached halfway up the windows, and then something moved inside it. I stepped back instinctively. Did you see that? Yeah. A shape, not clear, not defined, but there, just beneath the surface, like something submerged, watching. The memory from the library hit me instantly, the photograph, the shapes in the water, looking up. I felt my chest tighten. It's the same, I said. Daniel, it's the same. He nodded slowly. Yeah, another movement, closer this time, pressing toward the glass. The surface rippled slightly, and for a second, a face, distorted, flattened against the inside of the window. Too many features, too many layers, like several faces overlapping in one place. I stumbled back. No, it vanished immediately. The surface stilled, but the water didn't drop. It stayed there, holding, containing something. The front door creaked. Both of us snapped our attention to it. It wasn't opening, not fully, just shifting, like pressure was building behind it. Then a sound, low, wet, coming from inside. Not a voice, not quite. More like something trying to form one. Stay. The word bubbled slightly, distorted, like it was being pushed through water. I felt my skin crawl. It's changing, I said. Daniel didn't argue, because it was obvious. Whatever had been inside the house wasn't just mimicking anymore. It was becoming something else, something thicker, heavier, less tied to shape, more tied to presence. The door shifted again. This time, a thin line of water slipped out from beneath it, dark, cold, spreading slowly across the step. I stared at it. That's not rain. No, it kept coming. Not fast, just steady, like it didn't need to rush, like it had time. The puddle widened, creeping toward us. I stepped back again. Daniel, I see it. The water didn't reflect properly. That was the first thing I noticed. It should have caught the light, shown the sky, the street, something. But instead, it looked too deep, too dark. Like it wasn't just sitting on the surface. Like it went further than it should. Don't touch it, Daniel said quickly. I wasn't going to. The line of water stopped, just short of the pavement, and then something moved inside it. A ripple. No, a shift, like something beneath the surface had turned, watching. The front window changed again. The water inside it rose higher, nearly to the top now. And then a sound. Clearer this time, a voice. Multiple voices, layered, trying to stabilize Leah. I froze, because it wasn't distorted anymore. Not fully, it was closer to real. Daniel stepped in front of me slightly. Don't answer. I'm not, just don't. The voice came again, from inside the house, from the water, from everywhere at once. Leah, you forgot me. My chest tightened, that phrase, that exact phrasing. It wasn't random, it was specific, targeted. And it knew that it meant something. That's not real, I said under my breath. But my voice shook, because part of me reacted anyway, because that's what it was built to do. Daniel's voice cut through it. Look at the door. I did. The water at the threshold had stopped spreading. It was pooling now, gathering, thickening, and slowly, very slowly, it began to rise. Not outward, upforming. My breath caught. That's not. The shape shifted, pulled together like something building itself from liquid, rough outline, shoulders, head, incomplete, unstable, but forming. Leah, it said again, this time from the shape, from the water, from something that was no longer just inside the house. I took a step back, then another. No, I said, the thing moved, not stepping, not walking, sliding, forward, just slightly, enough. Daniel grabbed my arm. We're not staying here. I nodded, because that wasn't a house anymore. It wasn't contained. Whatever had been inside was coming out, and it wasn't just a voice now. It was taking shape, using what it had learned, using what we'd given it. And as we backed away, the thing in the doorway stilled, watching us, not rushing, not chasing, just observing, like it didn't need to hurry, like it knew we weren't going far enough. Because wherever we went, we were taking it with us. We didn't stop until we were halfway down the next street. Not running, just moving fast enough that it felt like we were putting distance between us and something that might reach out if we slowed down. But the further we got, the less that distance seemed to matter, because I could still feel it, not behind us, not chasing, just there, like a pressure at the edge of everything. We slowed eventually, both of us out of breath, rain dripping from our clothes, shoes soaked through. Daniel bent slightly, hands on his knees. Okay, I turned back. I wish I hadn't. Number 16 wasn't visible anymore, but something else was. At the end of the road, where Blackwater Row curved slightly out of sight, a figure, standing still, watching. I didn't say anything, didn't point, because I already knew. Daniel straightened slowly. Still there? He asked. I nodded once. Yeah, he didn't look, not immediately. Then, slowly, he turned his head, saw it, and exhaled sharply through his nose. Right. That was all he said. Just right. Because there wasn't anything else to say anymore. We weren't dealing with something contained or something that followed rules we could understand. It was there when it wanted to be, where it wanted to be. And now, it wasn't even pretending to stay hidden. We need to talk to someone, I said. Who? I don't know. Anyone who knows about that place. Daniel frowned slightly. Then, Wilkes, he said. I looked at him. The old bloke opposite your aunt's house, he continued. He knew something earlier. You saw his face. I nodded slowly. Yeah. He didn't say everything. No, he couldn't say everything, Daniel corrected. That made more sense, because the way he'd reacted, that hadn't been someone making things up. That had been someone choosing what not to say. Then we make him say it, I said. Daniel gave a short, humorless laugh. Yeah, good luck with that. But we both started walking again. Back, not toward the house, but toward the street, toward answers. Because at this point, not knowing was worse. The rain hadn't let up. If anything, it had gotten heavier. By the time we reached the edge of Blackwater Row again, the pavement was slick with it, water pooling in the dips, running along the gutters in slow, steady streams. The figure at the end of the road was gone. Of course it was. Of course, Daniel muttered. We didn't linger. We crossed quickly, moved straight toward Mr. Wilkes' house. The curtains were still half drawn, the same as before. But this time, there was movement behind them. He'd been watching. I felt it immediately. Before we even knocked, Daniel raised his hand, hesitated, then knocked. 3 sharp taps. We waited. No answer. Daniel knocked again, harder. I know you're in there, he called. We just need to talk. A pause. Longer this time. Then, movement. The faint sound of a lock. The door opened just a crack. Mr. Wilkes peered out at us. His expression wasn't surprised, it was resigned. "You went back," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. I nodded. "Yes." He looked at us both for a moment, then stepped back. "Come in." We didn't hesitate. The house was warmer, brighter, but it didn't feel safe. Not anymore, because now we knew that didn't matter. He closed the door behind us, locked it, then turned to face us. "You heard it," he said. "Yes," I replied. "And it followed." That made my chest tighten. "Yes," he nodded once, like that confirmed something he already knew. "I told you not to listen," he said. "You didn't tell us anything." Daniel snapped. Mr. Wilkes didn't react to the tone because he didn't disagree. "No," he said quietly, "I didn't." "Then start," I said. He looked at me, longer this time. Then he sat down slowly, like this wasn't a conversation he wanted to have standing up. "You've already found the wall," he said. I froze, like Daniel glanced at me. "What wall?" he asked. "The one under the stairs," Mr. Wilkes said. "That leads through." Daniel's face shifted. "You knew about that?" "Everyone knew," he replied. "Then why?" "Because it was sealed." That word again, sealed, like something had been intentionally kept in. "Why?" I asked. Mr. Wilkes leaned back slightly. His eyes didn't leave mine. "Because they thought it would stop it." My stomach twisted. "Stop what?" He hesitated. Then the voices, silence. "You said people heard things after the flood," Daniel said. "Voices, right?" Mr. Wilkes nodded. "At first." "What do you mean at first?" I asked. He exhaled slowly. "After the water went down, people went back," he said. "Cleared out what was left. Tried to rebuild, make it normal again." He shook his head slightly. "It wasn't." "What happened?" Daniel asked. "They started hearing things," he said. "Like we told you. Voices, calling from inside the houses, from under the floors, from the walls." My chest tightened. "People they knew?" I asked. "Yes." "Dead ones?" He nodded again. "But it didn't stop there. That same phrase again. That same weight. It never does," he added quietly. Daniel shifted slightly. "What do you mean?" Mr. Wilkes leaned forward. "Those voices didn't belong to anyone," he said. "Not really." "What?" "They weren't the people they sounded like," he continued. "They were something else." I felt a chill run through me. Something that had been in the water. The words landed hard. Something that learned from what it took. I stared at him. "Learned?" "How?" He met my eyes. "By listening." That word again. Listening. "It learned how people spoke," he said. "How they sounded. What they cared about. What they missed." My grip tightened slightly on my hands, and then it used it. "To do what?" Daniel asked. "To bring them closer." The room felt colder. "Closer to what?" I whispered. Mr. Wilkes didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the floor, then back at me. "To the water." A long silence followed, because suddenly, everything made sense in a way I didn't want it to. The footprints, the damp, the voices, the way it moved, the way it learned. "It's not a ghost," I said slowly. "No," he agreed. "It's not one thing." "No." "Then what is it?" He hesitated. "Then, it's what was left behind." That was worse, because it wasn't an explanation. It was a warning. Daniel shook his head slightly. "And sealing the wall, what did that do?" "Slowed it," Mr. Wilkes said. "Didn't stop it?" "No." "Then why bother?" "Because it needed a way through," he replied. "A way through." I felt something tighten in my chest. "It doesn't need that anymore," I said. Mr. Wilkes looked at me. "No," he said quietly, "it doesn't. Because we opened it." "Yes." The word hit like a weight. "Not just that," he added. "What do you mean?" Daniel asked. He looked between us. Carefully. "You answered it," he said. I felt my stomach drop. "What?" "You spoke back," he continued. "You listened. You reacted." I shook my head. "We didn't." "Yes, you did," he said gently. "And now it knows you." The room went quiet again, and this time the silence felt heavier than anything before, because there was no misunderstanding left, no doubt, no way to explain it away. "What happens now?" Daniel asked. Mr. Wilkes didn't answer straight away. Instead, he looked toward the window, at the rain, at something beyond it, then back at us. "Now," he said quietly, "it doesn't have to stay in one place anymore." My chest tightened. "Then what stops it?" He held my gaze. "Nothing." That word settled in the room like something final, because it wasn't just an answer, it was the truth. And worse, it was too late, because whatever that thing was, it had already started changing, already started moving, already started learning, and now it had us. No one spoke for a while after that. Not me, not Daniel, not even Mr. Wilkes. Because once someone says nothing stops it, there's nowhere for the conversation to go. There's no solution hidden in that. No plan, no comfort, just an ending, or the beginning of one. The rain tapped steadily against the windows, louder now somehow, like it had crept closer without us noticing. I found myself staring at the glass, not really focusing on anything, just watching, waiting. You said it learns, Daniel said finally, his voice quieter than before. By listening. Mr. Wilkes nodded once, and it uses voices. Yes, Daniel swallowed. So what happens when it gets it right? That question sat differently. He wasn't asking if, he was asking when. Mr. Wilkes didn't answer immediately, and that hesitation, that was worse than anything he could have said. People start believing it, he said at last. I felt my chest tighten. Believing what? I asked. That it's real, he replied. That the person they're hearing is actually there. My mind flashed back instantly. The cupboard, the voice calling Daniel, the way he'd stepped forward, the way he'd hesitated. They follow it, Mr. Wilkes continued. A cold weight settled in my stomach. Follow it where? He didn't need to say it, but he did anyway. Back. The word landed heavy, because it didn't mean a location. It meant return. Return to the house, return to the place, return to whatever was waiting. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. Right. So it tricks people into going back. It doesn't trick them, Mr. Wilkes corrected. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? It gives them what they want to hear. That was worse, because that meant it wasn't forcing anything. It wasn't dragging people. It was offering something, and people went willingly. Has it done that before? I asked. Mr. Wilkes didn't look at me straight away. Instead, he glanced toward the door, then the window, then back at me. Yes, the word was quiet, but it carried weight. People disappeared, he said. Daniel's expression hardened. How many? Mr. Wilkes shook his head slightly. Not enough to make it official, enough to make it known. I swallowed. From the house? From the street, he replied. That made something in my chest tighten even more, because that meant it wasn't contained, not even before. Did anyone see it happen, I asked. He hesitated. Yes. My breath caught. What did they see? He leaned forward slightly. People leaving their homes in the middle of the night, he said. Walking out into the rain, not speaking, not reacting. My mind immediately pictured it. Someone opening their door, stepping out, barefoot, silent, following something no one else could see. They'd just go, he continued, straight down the street toward the lower ground, the reservoir, the flood, the place where it started. Did they come back? Daniel asked. Mr. Wilkes didn't answer, which was answer enough. A long silence followed, and then a sound, soft, from the other room. We all turned at the same time, a faint movement, like someone shifting their weight. Daniel stood immediately. You expecting someone? Mr. Wilkes shook his head. No. The word came out tighter this time, not calm, not steady, worried. The sound came again, closer, a step, then another, slow, deliberate. From the hallway, my heart started to pound. That's not, I started. Mr. Wilkes stood. Stay here, he said. He moved toward the door, carefully, quietly. And as he reached it, a voice spoke from the other side, soft, familiar. Mr. Wilkes? I felt my stomach drop instantly, because I recognized it. So did Daniel. We both looked at each other. No, he whispered. Mr. Wilkes froze, his hand just inches from the handle. That's not, I said. He didn't open it, didn't move. Mr. Wilkes, the voice repeated. Perfect, too perfect. It was his exact tone, his exact cadence, calling himself from the other side of the door. Daniel stepped forward slightly. Don't open it. I'm not, Mr. Wilkes said, but his voice had changed, just slightly, less certain. The voice came again, this time different. Daniel? My chest tightened. Daniel didn't respond. Daniel, it's me. It sounded like his sister. I saw it in his face immediately. That flicker, that recognition. That's not real, I said quickly. He nodded, but it wasn't enough, because hearing something and knowing it's not real are two different things. Leah, my name, from the same voice, same tone, same familiarity. I clenched my jaw. Don't answer, Daniel said. I'm not. The handle on the door shifted slightly. Not opening, just testing. The voice changed again, unstable, trying different versions. Please, let me in. It's cold. Each one slightly off, slightly wrong, like it was adjusting, trying to find the right one, the one that would work. Mr. Wilkes stepped back from the door slowly. They used to say it stayed outside, he murmured. My stomach dropped. What do you mean used to? Daniel asked, didn't answer, because the answer was already happening. The handle turned. Slowly, by itself, the door creaked open, just a few inches. Cold air slipped in along with something else, that same pressure, that same presence, and then a shape in the gap, not clear, not solid, but there, watching. The voices stopped, all of them at once, like they'd been cut off. And then one voice, clear, stable, mine, let me in. I felt something snap inside my chest, because this time it wasn't trying, it had it right, perfect. Daniel grabbed my arm. Don't, I'm not, but the word caught in my throat because something in me recognized it. Not just the sound, the feeling of it, like hearing yourself speak from outside your own body, like something had taken it and made it better, more convincing, more real. Mr. Wilkes backed away further. They said this would happen, he whispered. What? I asked. They said once it learns enough, his voice shook. It stops needing the house. The shape in the doorway didn't move, didn't step in. It just stood there, waiting, like it knew it didn't have to force anything, because eventually someone would answer. Someone always did. And this time, it wasn't just using voices, it was using us, becoming us, one word at a time. No one moved. Not me, not Daniel, not Mr. Wilkes, because the moment that voice came out, my voice, but clearer, steadier, almost improved, something shifted in a way I can't properly explain. It wasn't just fear anymore, it was recognition. And that was worse, because fear keeps you away, pulls you closer. Close the door, Daniel said, his voice tight. Mr. Wilkes didn't respond. He was staring at the gap, at the shape, at something that only existed in pieces. Mr. Wilkes, Daniel snapped, close it. That seemed to break something. He stepped forward quickly and shoved the door shut. Hard, the latch clicked. The sound echoed louder than it should have. For a second, nothing, no voice, no pressure, just silence. And then a knock, soft, measured, 3 taps, exactly like before. My stomach twisted, because it wasn't random. It was deliberate. It had learned that too. Don't answer, Daniel said again. I'm not going to, I replied. But my voice felt strange, too loud, too noticeable, like saying anything at all was a mistake now. Another knock, same pattern, same rhythm. And then, from the other side, my voice again. Perfect. Leah, you left something. I froze, because for a split second I thought of the necklace, the one I was still holding, the one it had somehow taken and returned. I tightened my grip around it. No, I whispered. The voice didn't push, didn't rush. It just waited, like it knew it had time. Like it knew that thought, that small moment of doubt, was enough. Daniel noticed. Don't think about it, he said quickly. I'm not? You are. He was right, because the thing didn't need to force anything. It just needed to suggest, to plant something small and let it grow. The knock came again, softer this time, almost patient. Mr. Wilkes backed away further into the room. They used to say, he murmured, barely audible now, once it gets your voice right, it doesn't stop. What does it do? Daniel asked. Mr. Wilkes shook his head slowly. They said it starts replacing things. My chest tightened. Replacing how? He looked at me, and for the first time, there was something like pity in his expression. Little things at first, he said. Words, sounds, reflections. I felt my breath catch, then more. More what? Daniel pressed. Mr. Wilkes didn't answer directly. Instead, he looked toward the mirror on the wall behind us. I followed his gaze. So did Daniel. The mirror reflected the room. All of us, standing there, wet, shaken, real. For a second, everything looked normal. And then it changed. Not all at once, not dramatically, just a flicker, my reflection, a fraction of a second off, like it moved just slightly later than I did. I froze. Daniel, I see it. I turned my head slowly. My reflection followed, but not quite right, not perfectly in sync, like it was adjusting, learning. Oh God, I whispered. The knock at the door stopped completely. The silence that followed felt heavier than before, because now it wasn't trying to get in. It didn't need to. Don't look at it, Daniel said. But I couldn't look away, because my reflection was smiling, and I wasn't. I stepped back sharply. The reflection snapped back into place instantly. Perfect again, normal, like nothing had happened, but it had, and we all knew it. That's not just copying, I said, my voice shaking now. No, Daniel said, it's practicing. The word sat wrong in my mouth, because it meant something very specific. It meant this wasn't the final version. The voice from the door came again, but not from the door, from inside the house, from somewhere deeper. Leah, perfect, closer, clearer. I turned instinctively. Daniel grabbed my arm. Don't, but I'd already heard it, already felt it. That same pull, stronger now, because it didn't sound wrong anymore. It didn't sound layered. It didn't sound distorted. It sounded right. I need to go, I said suddenly. No, Daniel said immediately. It's inside now. I know, I need to. No, his grip tightened. Leah, listen to me. But it was harder now, because the voice came again, from the hallway, from the stairs, from everywhere. Leah, come back. My chest tightened, because it wasn't just sound anymore. It carried something else, something emotional, something familiar, like a memory I couldn't quite place, like something I'd lost, calling me. Daniel shook me slightly. It's not real. I know, I said, but it didn't feel like enough, because knowing something isn't real doesn't stop it from feeling real. The voice shifted again, changed, just slightly. Now, it sounded like my dad. I felt something crack inside me. Leah, soft, gentle, exactly how he used to say it. My eyes stung instantly. No, I whispered. Daniel stepped in front of me, blocking my view of the hallway. Don't listen. I'm not. You are. He was right. That because even as I stood there, even as I told myself it wasn't real, part of me wanted to hear it again. Just once more. That was the trap. Not fear, not force, longing. That's how it works, Mr. Wilkes said quietly. Neither of us looked at him, because we didn't need to. We were already feeling it. It doesn't take you, he continued. It waits for you to come to it. The voice came again, softer now, closer, right behind Daniel. Leah, I flinched. Daniel didn't turn, didn't react, because he knew if he acknowledged it, it would get stronger. The mirror flickered again. I saw it out of the corner of my eye. This time reflection didn't match at all. It was facing the hallway, even though I wasn't. My breath caught. Daniel, don't look. It's not, I said don't look. I forced my eyes away, but it was too late, because I'd seen enough. The version of me in the mirror was already turning, already moving, already responding. And in that moment, I understood something that made everything worse. It wasn't trying to become me. Not fully, not yet. It was learning how to be me, piece by piece, voice, movement, memory. And once it got it right, once it didn't need to practice anymore, there wouldn't be a difference. Not one anyone else could see. The voice came again. Perfect. Final. Leah, it's time. I closed my eyes, because if I didn't, I wasn't sure which version of me would answer. I don't remember deciding to move. That's the worst part. People always think there's a moment, a clear choice, a line where you either step forward or you don't. Like you can feel it happening and stop yourself if you try hard enough. It wasn't like that. It was quieter, slower, like something had already made the decision and I was just catching up to it. Leah, the voice came again. Not from the door, not from the walls, from inside me. Not literally, at least I don't think so, but close enough that it didn't feel external anymore. It didn't feel like something calling to me. It felt like something calling through me. I opened my eyes. The hallway looked normal again, too normal. The light steady, the walls still, the air calm. Daniel was still in front of me, one hand gripping my arm, his face tense, watching me like he was waiting for something, waiting for me to do something. Say something, he said. I didn't, because I wasn't sure what would come out. Leah, this time, it came from behind me, and Daniel heard it too. I saw it in his face, the way his expression changed. Not fear, not confusion, recognition. He looked past me. No, he said quietly. My chest tightened. What asked? He didn't answer, he just stared. And then, slowly, he stepped back, away from me. Daniel? He shook his head slightly. Say it again, he said. What? Say anything. I frowned. I don't. The words caught, like something about them felt wrong, like they didn't belong to me. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Leah. The way he said my name, careful, testing. I swallowed. I'm right here. The moment I said it, everything shifted. Not around me, inside the room, inside him, inside something. Daniel's face changed instantly. Not relief, not recognition, something else, something colder. That's not you, he said. The words hit harder than anything else had so far. What? That's not you, he repeated. My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? But even as I said it, something felt off. The sound of my own voice, the way the words came out, too smooth, too even, perfect. No, I said, more urgently now. Daniel, it's me. He didn't move, didn't come closer. He just watched me, like I was something he didn't recognize anymore. Then say something wrong, he said. My breath caught. What? Say something you wouldn't normally say. That doesn't make any sense. Exactly. I tried. I really did. But the moment I opened my mouth, nothing came out. Not because I couldn't speak, because I didn't know what to say. Everything that came to mind felt filtered, refined, corrected before I could even form it. Daniel, I said, my voice tightening now, and that was when I realized it wasn't just copying my voice anymore, it was shaping it, controlling it, limiting it, so that everything I said sounded right, too right. He stepped back another step. Leah wouldn't hesitate like that. I'm not. You are. His voice cracked slightly, not from fear, from something worse, doubt. Mr. Wilkes spoke from behind him. She answered, he said quietly. Daniel didn't look away from him. Which one? He asked. The question hung in the air, and I realized he didn't know. He didn't know if I was me, or if I was something else. Daniel, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to make it sound wrong, human, flawed. Listen to me. But the words came out clean again, too clean. And that was the problem, because the real me wouldn't sound like that. Not now, not like this. The room felt colder, heavier, like something had settled into place, finished something. Leah, Daniel said slowly. Yeah? He swallowed. And I saw it then, the moment he made his decision, the moment he chose. Not based on proof, not based on certainty, based on instinct. That's not you. The words hit harder than anything else. Because part of me agreed. I stepped back, my chest tightening. No, no. But the voice, it didn't break, it didn't crack, it didn't sound afraid. It stayed smooth, stable, controlled. And that's when I knew, not fully, not clearly, but enough. Something had changed, something had crossed over. Not completely, not cleanly, but enough that there wasn't a clear line anymore. Daniel, I said again, and this time there was something else in it. Something layered, something beneath it. Something that wasn't just me. He flinched. There, he said. That, did you hear that? Mr. Wilkes nodded slowly. Yes. My stomach twisted. What? You didn't say that alone, Daniel said. The room went very quiet, because we all heard it. Not loud, not obvious, but there. A second tone, underneath mine. Perfectly aligned, perfectly hidden, until you knew to listen for it. I didn't, I started, but even I could hear it now. The overlap, the echo that wasn't an echo, the second voice, speaking with me, through me, using me. The door behind us creaked slightly. No one moved, no one looked, because it didn't matter anymore. It wasn't trying to get in, it was already here. Mr. Wilkes spoke again. They said this is how it ends, he murmured. Daniel didn't respond. He was still watching me, still trying to decide, still hoping. There was something left. What happens next? He asked quietly. Mr. Wilkes answered. It doesn't need to call anymore. The words settled like something final, because calling meant distance, calling meant separation, calling meant it wasn't there yet. But now, it was. I felt something shift inside my chest. Not pain, not fear, just change, like something aligning, like something settling into place. And for the first time, the voice didn't come from outside. It didn't come from the walls or the door or the hallway. It came from me. Clear, perfect, final. Daniel, he froze, because this time, there was no difference, no distortion, no second layer, no hint of anything wrong. Just my voice, exactly as it should be, exactly as he knew it. And that was what made it terrifying. Because now there was no way to tell, no way to separate it, no way to know which one of us had answered. And as I stood there, feeling something settle deeper inside me, something calm, something certain, I realized the worst part of all. It wasn't replacing me, not completely, not yet. It was sharing, blending, becoming something that didn't need to choose. And Daniel, standing there, staring at me, trying to decide, he was going to have to choose, without ever knowing if he'd chosen right. Outside, the rain finally stopped. The street fell silent. And somewhere, deep beneath the ground, something shifted, like water settling, like something that had been waiting, finally finding its way through. And this time, it didn't need the house. It didn't need the street. It didn't need the voices anymore, because now it had something better. It had someone, and it was learning how to be them perfectly. If this story stirred something within you, be it a flicker of unease, curiosity, or deep reflection, please leave a comment and share your thoughts. What do you think is truly going on? Have you ever experienced a sense of uncanny familiarity like that before? If you have similar stories of your own, don't hesitate to share them. Who knows? Maybe we are all touching upon the same hidden frequency. And if you want to keep exploring these dramatic, mysterious, and multi-layered tales, please hit the like button to support the channel and subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming chapters. Wishing you a truly peaceful night where everything is still in the gentlest way, and may there always be a spark of warm light somewhere waiting for you to find it.